So today, as our Wednesday afternoon sales session, we're going to go a little bit different approach. We're going to talk about the income floor approach. Some of the slides that I have is from my friend in the industry, Tom Hegna. He has allowed me to use a lot of his slides that he uses in his presentations. So I just took his background and put some of the DMI stuff in there. So we're only talking probably about 10 or 12 slides, but I think the income floor approach is something that you guys can use successfully when you're talking to both prospects as well as your current clients. So why don't we get started? The income floor approach is just a method of doing retirement income planning. Let me just get to one little quick thing here, 1 second.
While Jim's doing that, I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in today. Appreciate the time. Always great to have you guys on.
Let's do this again and start from the beginning. There we go. All right. So we've spoken over the past bunch of weeks about what to do at different appointments. So today what I want to talk about is a sales concept. So when we talk about the first appointment, as we've said before, in my opinion, the first appointment is the most important appointment. You sit down with the client, you start asking open-ended questions, and what's the reason for that? The goal is to find a pain or some sort of challenge that the client has. You want to make sure, because if you don't find a pain, there's really nothing you can do for them. So it could be running out of money, could be healthcare costs, leaving a legacy, kids' college, stuff like that. The goal is to have that conversation, find out what the pain is. Then once you do that, get confirmation from the client or prospect that this is what the pain is, and the two of you are going to work together to mitigate that pain. Once you get confirmation of that, the next step is to actually give them homework. And again, we've talked about this before, about what the homework looks like. We have handouts so that if anyone needs them again, I can send them out. In this situation, what we're going to do is we're going to use the idea that the pain for the client is actually running out of money in retirement. Okay, so at that first appointment, you sat down, found out what the pain is, and then you gave them homework for the second appointment. So let's say the second appointment, you collected both the asset worksheet, which basically tells what their assets are, as well as the expenses worksheet. That breaks down all of their expenses between essential expenses as well as discretionary expenses. Okay, and once you do that, you bring that back to the office and you put together a game plan. So here's the scenario we're going to quickly go over today. So we have a 65-year-old male who has worked all of his life and has $1 million in savings, we'll say. Again, I like nice, easy numbers. And you found that out by collecting the asset worksheet and by collecting the expenses worksheet. You also found out that he's looking for $90,000 of income stream each year. And you actually broke that down, or he broke that down. 65,000 of it is in bills or essential expenses. And then 25,000 is the discretionary expenses, sort of like going out to dinner, taking a vacation, purchasing that convertible, something like that. So now we've broken down the expenses, and from there what we want to do is take a look at how to cover those expenses. So there are two simple steps in this scenario to a successful retirement. Number one, cover your basic expenses, that's $65,000, with guaranteed lifetime income. So what we're going to do, and I know this slide is a little bit involved. I'm going to leave it up here for a little while. What we did is, as you see, the basic expenses being $65,000, the discretionary expenses being $25,000. And what we've also found out is that the client has a pension of $12,000, and the client is getting $24,000 in Social Security. Pretty standard, pretty run-of-the-mill there. So out of that $65,000 that the client needs for expenses, we have 36,000 is covered with an income stream that he will never outlast. So we have a shortfall of about $29,000. And depending on when the client is looking to retire is what type of product you would use to make up that shortfall. If the client needs that income, they're looking to retire as soon as possible, then you're probably talking about some sort of income annuity. If the client, say, maybe is 5 or 10 years down the road, then you could look at other things that will eventually turn into income. That time it could be a MIGA if we're talking annuities, could be a fixed indexed annuity. If your securities license, could be a variable annuity or possibly mutual funds if we're talking at least 5 years out. But in this scenario, client wants to retire as soon as they possibly can. So what we're going to do, see the next slide, we're going to take out of that $1 million. It's going to take about $316,000 of it to put in an income annuity to generate that $29,000. So we're now at the point where the client's essential expenses, his basic expenses, his bills are now paid for the rest of his life, even if he lives to be 110 years old. It has no exposure to the market. So if the market goes down 20, 30%, it doesn't matter. Now the client can sleep better at night knowing their bills are paid. However, that's not all of the expenses that the client is looking for. They're also looking for $25,000 to cover discretionary expenses. And we went over discretionary expenses earlier. The key to covering this, however, is to make sure that you have some sort of protection for inflation. Inflation, while it's low right now, around 2 or under 2%, inflation eats at the purchasing power of the client's funds. And there are a couple different ways to address inflation risk. You can go into, you can go into some sort of I bond or government bond that goes up with inflation. However, right now, the interest rates on those bonds are so low, it's not really worth looking at. You could have put on the income annuity an inflation adjustment. They do have those. However, when you do that, you have to put a lot more money into it for it to be feasible. But the best way to do it is just to have some money in the market. And depending on a couple of things, if the client cannot handle losing principal, then maybe you're looking at a fixed index annuity. That does, while it's not directly in the market, it is indirectly in the market, and it does counteract inflation risk. If your securities license and the client does not mind losing principal, well, then maybe you're talking about a variable annuity or some sort of mutual fund or something along those lines. But in this situation, we're going to take a look at how we can cover that $25,000 by whatever product works best. So now we have basically $684,000 in the account needed to generate $25,000 per year. A couple different ways we can go. We can go, like I said, depending on what type of license you have, as well as what the client's risk tolerance is with the principal. You can either go with a fixed indexed annuity, or you can put something in the market. In this slide, in this situation, the client has a nice mix of both equities, bonds, as well as some lifetime income as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go to cover the discretionary expenses. The key, though, is you want to use that money to counteract inflation, while the rest of the money is used to cover the basic expenses. And like I said, that you want to put in some sort of annuitization product that client will never outlive and has no reaction to what the market does. So pretty much straightforward on how this works, in that you find out by using the DMI expenses worksheet what their expenses are, have it broken down between essential, discretionary, cover essential with some sort of income stream that's fully guaranteed, whether it's an annuity, whether it's a pension, whether it's Social Security. And the rest you cover with whatever's left over, but you have to keep in mind that we need to counteract inflation. So what I want to do is just go over a real quick concept that you can use, and trust me, if you go out with the client, go sit down with the client, get the asset worksheet filled out, get the expenses worksheet filled out, you're not going to just write $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 in business. You're going to write $300,000, $400,000, $750,000 in business. And that's where you're also going to get a lot more referrals, and you're going to sleep better at night because you did what's best for the client. And now the client's not worried about them, say, losing 10, 20% in the market to cover their bills. And so again, quick little concept I wanted to go over today. And you know what? That's it. I didn't really want to go into very deep into this. If you want to go deeper, let's have a conversation and let's figure it out, how best to work the process that DMI has created and we're using with a lot of our agents and advisors to write larger cases and get more referrals. So in conclusion, the bottom line is this: leverage DMI, leverage us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you write better business and write more business when you're sitting down with a prospect and clients. I thought this was going to be a pretty quick one today, and it was. It only took about 15 or 16 minutes off here. Again, as everyone knows, if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch with myself or Amy, because that's what we're here for.